Right now on Upfront.
Damage control.
I know, like millions of Americans know, when you get knocked down, you get back up.
This weekend, the debate fallout, the campaigning continuing, Democrats panicked over President Biden's performance. Talk of replacing him on the ballot, now the implications in Wisconsin.
Should Joe Biden stay at the top of the ticket?
Maryland Governor Wes Moore in Wisconsin. All this as Robert F. Kennedy Jr. prepares to launch his own bid to appear on the state's ballot. The stakes high, and this campaign manager is here with us.
Then going rogue.
And here is the reality.
Senator Bernie Sanders crisscrossing Wisconsin, his own tour not affiliated with the Biden campaign. Is he the Democrat you wanted to run?
Well, obviously not.
He's one-on-one with us, a key surrogate the Biden camp will need. And Charles Franklin, the Marquette Law School poll director, on the debate's impact.
And race against time.
It's hard to believe we watched the calendar tick down.
Countdown to the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee. Now the big party planned at the Summerfest grounds just moments away.
This is Upfront with Jaron Jordan and political director Matt Smith.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. The fallout immense this weekend, and it's rippling across key swing states like Wisconsin. Here's a look at the immediate headlines following Thursday's debate. Politico reporting panicked Dems start looking for alternatives. The Washington Post, Democrats doubt Biden's future. The New York Times describing a panicking party.
Do you think anyone won the debate last night?
Won?
Yeah.
I don't even know. Have you guys ever seen the movie Dumb and Dumber?
Nobody won that debate. We didn't win either as the United States people.
This weekend, though, the campaigning is continuing. Maryland Governor Wes Moore in Wisconsin this weekend for the Biden campaign. Governor, thanks for your time. We appreciate it. I mean, coming off post-debate, is this nothing to see here, business as usual? We're just moving on? I mean, what are you telling people on the ground this weekend?
Well, you know, I planned on being here in Wisconsin prior to the debate. Nothing that happened during the debate changed my mind or my excitement to get out all over the country if necessary and to make the case for why I think President Biden is not just the right person for this moment, but why the work that he has done and the vision that he has for the next 4 years is one that I believe in and I think our country's going to benefit from.
I've gotten text, I'm sure you've gotten text. There are some deep concerns, whether it be donors, whether it be voters. What are you saying about those deep concerns?
I'd say, you know, and listen, I think we're all hear it. And what we saw was not President Biden's best night. Even he acknowledges it wasn't his best night.
Is there more, though?
No, I think when people look at the results, when people look at what's happening, when people look at the fact that we actually are making the kind of investments in our future that we have needed and wanted for so long, we finally have an administration that's giving that to us. That's what gives us a measure of excitement, that this is very much a choice right now, and a choice of two very different visions for the future of the country, which we saw on display. And especially when we understand that this is a choice between the president and Donald Trump. It is very clear to me. One is focused on the future. One is focused on investing in all of us. One is focused on how can we actually build collectively and build together. And the other is focused on how can you tear us apart. That's not a vision that I buy nor believe in. And so I am all in for the president.
Have you talked to the president since the debate?
I have not talked to the president.
What would you tell him?
I would tell the president that the work that he continues to do continues to make an impact on the lives of Marylanders. I know that the morning after the debate, we were actually working with the White House, where they were announcing that they were urging Congress for a 100% cost share on the bridge, on the key bridge collapse, so we can get the process going and get it moving. That kind of work matters, and so I think that the fact that the White House has continued to move forward says everything that I needed to know about where they are.
Quickly, there's talk among some of an open convention. Would you back that idea at all?
No, I'm supporting President Biden.
In Milwaukee, you're talking with black voters. Before we go quickly, in the city, there is low enthusiasm. There's low enthusiasm in other key swing states. What is your message specifically to black voters as we're now 4 months out?
Yeah, I mean, as the only African-American governor in the country and only the third ever elected in the history of the United States, I understand a lot of the frustration and cynicism that a lot of folks in the black community feel, because frankly, it's cynicism that I share in many cases, that there's a history of seeing how the black community has not been considered or kept in mind when some of these policy decisions have been made, and for many of us, our families have suffered the consequences for it. The thing I would also say, though, is this, that in this time and in this moment, not only do you have an administration who's going to go earn every vote, but they're going to go earn every vote by showing that there's actual results to show. And we're looking at historic investments in our HBCUs. We're looking at the lowest unemployment rate amongst African Americans that has ever been on record. We're looking at the fact that small business ownership by black men is the highest that it has been in over 30 years, that the racial wealth gap has decreased by 60% since Joe Biden has been the president of the United States. These results matter. And so as we're going out and talking to black voters, as we do all the time, we're saying we're going to go earn the vote. We're taking nothing for granted. And at the same time, we've got results to show that progress is being made.
Milwaukee Mayor Cavalier Johnson seen as a young rising star in the Democratic Party and a delegate to the convention. At this point, should Joe Biden stay at the top of the ticket?
I think Joe Biden should stay at the top of the ticket. Look, Joe Biden has proven, that as president of the United States, he is in command, he's in control, he knows how to perform the job, and citizens in Milwaukee, citizens in Wisconsin, and citizens across the United States are better off because of Joe Biden's leadership.
And you think the debate showed that?
Look, I think that Joe Biden, in his performance last night, showed that he is a man who is competent, yes, who is compassionate, yes, who is a man that is focused on the substance of doing the job of president. Like, this is not just about performance. This is about substance. And that's what Joe Biden showed last night.
As a delegate, would you be open to the idea, the possibility of an open convention in Chicago?
I'm interested in seeing Joe Biden continue to be our nominee. Joe Biden's the only person that's ever beaten Donald Trump in an election. I think Joe Biden can beat Donald Trump again in an election, and I'm looking forward to Donald Trump losing to Joe Biden this November.
That's not a no on the open convention possibility.
I am interested in Joe Biden continue to be our nominee.
Meantime, Senator Bernie Sanders on his own statewide tour across Wisconsin, not affiliated with the Biden campaign.
Sanders, the independent senator from Vermont who's run for president as a Democrat, the Biden camp needs as a key surrogate to also win over skeptical progressive Democrats. We talked in Mount Pleasant before the debate. You're here touring around the state of Wisconsin, not here on behalf of the Biden campaign. So what is this?
Well, yes and no.
Yes and no?
Look,
okay.
This country faces some of the most difficult times we have in the modern history of America. Everybody knows that. We're dealing with massive income and wealth inequality. We're dealing with the existential threat of climate change. We're dealing with a mental health crisis. We're dealing with attempts on the part of some people to take away women's rights to control their own body. So there's a lot to discuss. And I love getting out. I love doing it. So I look forward to going throughout Wisconsin and other states to talk about the important issues facing our country. At the end of the day, obviously, we've got an election coming up in 5 months. I think clearly for the working families of our country who are struggling, President Biden is by far the preferential candidate.
Is he the Democrat you wanted to run?
Well, obviously not. I had hoped that I would win the Democratic nomination and I would have been the candidate, but I didn't. But I've known Joe Biden for many years. He's a very decent guy. Do we disagree on some issues? We surely do, but we agree on a number of other issues.
There's a guy outside holding a sign that wants you to replace Biden on the ticket. What do you tell those people as we're now almost 4 months away from the election?
You know, President Biden is going to be the candidate, and we've all got to rally around him. Look, in the real world, people have differences of opinion. I disagree with the president on a number of issues, especially the situation in Gaza. I have very different points of view. But if we are going to protect democracy, if we're going to protect workers' rights, if we're going to deal with climate change, if we're going to deal with women's rights, the choice is absolutely clear that Biden is the preferable candidate.
What do you tell those pro-Palestinian protesters, Democrats some of the time, who say, I'm staying home, I'm not voting for Biden?
I understand it. And, you know, I've probably spoken out on that issue more than anybody else in the U.S. Senate. What is going on in Gaza right now is unspeakable. It's horrible.
There's a new poll out here in Wisconsin today that shows some real big warning signs on enthusiasm for Biden and for Democrats here in the state. How concerned are you as a progressive?
I am.
Could he lose this election because of that?
Yes, he could. And I think the war in Gaza is making a difficult situation even worse. But I would ask young people and working people in general, which candidate is going to be stronger on workers' rights? And there is no question about that. So the difference is, again, I understand there is a lack of enthusiasm, and it does concern me. But I think at the end of the day, if you look at both candidates, the choice is pretty clear.
Now, one of the presidential candidates not on the stage Thursday night, Robert Kennedy Jr., the independent whose campaign in just hours will start collecting signatures to appear on Wisconsin's ballot in November. And his presence could have a big impact.
The new Marquette Law School poll taken before the debate shows when given the option, 8% of Wisconsin registered voters picked Kennedy. It is a big concern for both the Biden and Trump campaigns. Amaryllis Fox Kennedy is the Kennedy campaign manager. She joins us now from California. Hey, welcome to the show. Good to see you.
Thanks so much for having me.
Let's start with the debate. RFK Jr. not on the debate stage. He did his own event online answering the same questions. I'm curious, though, your initial reaction to what we saw on that debate stage Thursday night.
Well, I think Americans deserve a better choice, and I think they think so, too. The last 8 years have really put this country on the wrong trajectory, and I think watching both Presidents Biden and Trump last night was a pretty good explanation as to why.
Looking ahead to the second scheduled debate in September, is there a scenario where RFK Jr. will be on that debate stage?
Oh, I think he's going to be on that debate stage. I think he won last night in many people's minds. We ran our own parallel three-way debate. More than 50% of Americans now identify as independents. They had no representation on the CNN stage. I think you've got to have the independent candidate that everybody wants to hear on that stage, and I think he will be there for the next debate.
The campaign can start collecting signatures on Monday to get on Wisconsin's ballot. 2,000 valid signatures are needed. What is the campaign's operation in Wisconsin going to look like?
Well, it's all grassroots all of the time. Ballot access is a challenge for independent candidates, but we really like to see it as a hidden opportunity. It's encouraged us to have the best county by county ground game, state by state across the country. Wisconsin is one of our best. They've been biting at the bit to get started. It's one of the latest ballot access states. So they start Monday, as you said. I think we'll be done in 2 weeks. We'll probably collect 4,000 or 5,000 signatures just to be sure that we have far more than we need. And if our other states' performance is anything to go by, it may be far, far more than that.
In Marquette's new poll, RFK Jr. came in at 8% among registered voters. It's down from 13 in April, 16 in January. Is his support here fading, and why do you think that is?
I don't think it is. We see incredible fervor on the ground for Kennedy in Wisconsin. The polls are interesting because they put the two other candidates in head-to-head races and then ask secondary questions about other candidates. What we've seen is that when you do a three-way race, the numbers are very different.
Broadly, do you see your goal here as pulling more votes away from Biden or Trump?
Oh, we are in this to win this, and we have consistently seen support drawn from both sides. We tend to have slightly more people who identify as Democrats, but when you ask those people who they would vote for if Bobby were not in the race, slightly more of them say they would vote for President Trump.
Can we expect RFK Jr. in Wisconsin? And if so, when do you expect that?
Absolutely. We're getting out on the campaign trail. We've been very focused on ballot access states because of the enormous, over 1 million signatures across the country. And as soon as we finish up with our last ballot access signature, then we get to be out on the campaign trail talking to voters everywhere in earnest, and Wisconsin's top of our list.
Is signature gathering getting underway in just hours? Amaryllis Fox Kennedy, campaign manager for RFK Jr.'s campaign. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Up next, the enthusiasm gap, the new revelations in Marquette's new poll, and the major implications ahead of November. Poll director Charles Franklin is here next.